Hello humans, we're happy to be here on Point Blank. Our name is Donkong and today we are going to break down our track Gone with Karol tip, which is out now on Heldeep.
I'll be gone.
By the way, today we are in Bitwig, which is a quite unusual DAW, but we use it for a while now. It's in version 3 and we like it for various reasons, but the things we talk about today are not as special, and you can definitely do all of those things also in your Logic or Ableton or whatever you use.
So first things first, we talk about the chords, the keys we're playing, and it's kind of simple, just like in an older tune of us, like you say. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to chords, so I always start off with one high note playing throughout all the chords. It's F in this case. And the cool thing is that you can create chords pretty easily if you have like this one note playing throughout. So I can show you, these are the chords. And all I did there is I added some triads to each chord.
Wait a minute, Johannes actually means the third and not triads. He's not a native speaker and thought that triad is the same as terz in German. I'm really sorry for his low intelligence. Let me fix this.
And all I did there is I added some
thirds
to each chord. It's really easy to play because you don't have to think much. All you have to know is which root note do you want, like this for example, and then what's the
third
to my root note, and that's everything you need to know for this.
Plus the high note that stays on the same key all the time.
Yeah. And also the notes are pretty spread wide out.
Yeah.
That's something I also did in Like You Say, for example. We mostly do this because the sound has kind of like a wide frequency range. And if you put them near each other, like this, it distorts pretty hard and also sounds kind of messy. So I really like to spread these out so you have kind of like a clean chord, even though your sound is kind of complex and distorted.
It has to do with the harmonic series. You can look up a video by Andrew Huang who talked about it. And yeah, that's basically the reason why such widespread chords sound a lot better when distorted later on.
So let me play you the raw Serum sound without processing. It's kind of different.
Very messy.
Yeah, really, really messy. So what we got here is 2 wavetables. One is the Rhodes wavetable. It's from a Cymatics pack. I think it's a free pack actually, because I don't own any commercial Cymatics packs. And it's getting FM'd from a basic shape. It's a sine wave 2 octaves up. And the most important thing about the sound in general is this LFO here, this curve. And it's doing all the work here on the oscillator, like FMing, leveling up, like really, really basic stuff. It's also just like one voice here on every oscillator, so it's really, really mono. And then I added some noise oscillator here, and I really like these weird SOR. I really like all these noises here because they have some kind of tone to it or some kind of, I don't know, they're kind of weird, most of them. And Horns of Fear is a cool name for a wavetable anyway.
That's why you chose it.
That's why I chose it. And with the noise oscillator, there's a little bit of pitch modulation from the LFO. I don't know if you need that. But with the oscillator, it sounds like this. Is it even doing something? I don't know if it's really doing something. It's just like for the cool name, maybe.
I mean, you also have to say that the whole sound developed from a different preset. Like you see it on the top, bounce that wop. So it was a different preset, and we kind of tweaked it to this song. So you probably don't need the noise oscillator at all. I think the sub oscillator is much more important because it's 1 octave lower.
Funny thing is, I think we added a different sub later on. So I think this one is kind of just playing with the chords, making it even more messy and bad sounding actually. And it's direct out. Then we have good old low pass filter here and the LFO on the cutoff. And that's basically our part here. Pretty important, I think, is that the fat is all the way up to get some good fat bass in there. Now, next up, the flanger filter plus, just to get some weird harmonics in here. That's you can feel it. It's more of an emotional thing, maybe, not really like a sound design thing. It's doing a little bit of harmonic brilliance.
It's very subtle.
It's very subtle, yeah. Then distortion, and I think this one is actually important. This one is actually doing something.
It's cleaning up the sound again.
Yeah, a lot. It's on bandpass, and it's only a small range here, and drive is at like 40%, something like that, and the mix is also not at full power. So it's kind of cleaning it up a bit. Next up, a flanger. This one is pretty loud, pretty high mix here. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like it's getting messier and messier with the more effects.
But it's also doing a little bit of stereo stuff.
Oh, that's true. Then chorus. Also a bit of stereo stuff going on, but also very, very subtle. And reverb. So we have a pretty small room here. Just to give it some dimension, some room.
But also with the reverb, there's a tone in the
background, like the high tone is kind of, yeah. And last one is the EQ. That's also like a pretty typical thing to do to clean a sound up. Is a low cut here, and the frequency gets automated up by our LFO. That's like to clean up the low mids and the sub even more. And there's a little nudge here, just taking out some of these high, bad sounding frequencies.
But also automating EQ is always nice because you get some phasing from the EQ, and when you move it, the phasing moves the harmonics somehow, and it's always giving it some taste and slur.
I also think like the EQ is kind of like a third filter you have in Serum.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. If you run out of filters, which happens sometimes, you can use the EQ to shape your sound drastically one more time. That's pretty cool. That's it for our Serum chain. And that's not all, because the sound is still not doing much.
Very dull.
So I think our main goal from now on was to get some harmonics and to get some high frequencies and to get this sound to sound good. And first off, we have FabFilter Saturn. I think this is just a preset. I don't know if I tweaked it, but I don't think so. It's just some saturation, like pretty heavy stuff actually, and like a really hard tube on the mids. I think the most important part is the EQ right here. And yeah, that's just a pretty crazy EQ, like taking out all of the mids to make this sound really clean and just pushing the highs like crazy.
The thing is, when you record a guitar, you probably don't want to boost it like 12 dB in the highs. It will sound very unnatural. But with synths, if you create a synth, the listener doesn't know what was the original sound of it. They have no reference for it. So you can go totally crazy in the beginning if you create and design your sound. So it's pretty normal to do harsh curves like this with like 10 dB there and minus 6 dB there. So play around.
Yeah.
That's also what we do to come up with new ideas. Just play around.
So next up, I have a little kind of like a fat rack. It's a self-built thing. Again, some more mid cleaning and pushing up the low highs. Some more Saturn. This is also just really, really basic tape saturation. Some OTT.
20%.
Just 20%. Some blur. Blur is kind of like a
dimension expander.
Yeah, dimension expander thing, like a stereo tool and a disperser. And this is kind of like a cool tool. It's like an all-pass filter.
If you don't know what an all-pass filter does, an all-pass filter also changes the phases. And with something like the disperser, you can, for example, tune the bottom end of a kick, for example. The timing changes, and so the harmonics that lined up before are now not lining up anymore. Like if you take a saw wave, it doesn't sound like a saw wave anymore if you use this. It changes the shape of your waveform by changing its phase.
That's it for the fat rack. We got some more OTT. Again, 33%. We wanted to get rid of even more mids, and we used a pretty cool tool for this, and that's Soothe, which is also taking out lots of mids, like lower mids. Soothe is normally just used for high frequencies mostly, like if you have really screechy sounds and kind of, or on vocals for de-essing.
So that's what Soothe is taking out.
Yeah. I think Delta is also actually a pretty funny idea to get really weird sounds, because we could also work with this sound on something. But yeah.
There's a new track idea. Let's go!
Then we have some side chaining by just kickstart, because we're lazy. Normal kickstart curve. Some last FX layer right here with some more EQing, just some more low cutting. Saturn. Some tape saturation in the high frequencies here, around like 4 kilohertz. And then some Valhalla room, and I think the Valhalla is getting automated, isn't it?
The beginning of the second drop, is it?
Yeah. I think this gets kind of automated. This is like a really basic move to do, I think, if you have a really repetitive chord sound, is to just make it interesting by automating the reverb mix. So now with the processing and the sub, this is what we got right now.
Now, this was the writing stage where we wrote the tune and made the sound like we liked it, and then we went to stem out the whole track and mix the whole thing. And there's some more processing going on, a little bit of mixing EQ. It's not doing as much, like boosting the highs a bit, taking out some low mids, and here probably I think the 11K, that's probably Serum has some weird stuff going on with the filter. Soothe to clean up the highs.
Yeah. On hard mode, so it's really doing.
Yeah, it's probably doing
hard work.
Some mid-side EQing to clean up the side signal a little bit, and sometimes you do this mid-side EQs to kind of change the image overall, because you have drums going on, you have shakers and percussions going on here and there, and sometimes you have to boost or cut your synth here and there to make it stand out, or kind of hide away some other elements, or that the whole thing sounds balanced, but on its own it makes not such a big difference. And in the end there's a peak limiter to take off some of the peaks. I also duplicated the track, and the second track is also there to change the stereo feeling of the main synth. I only took the low mids and made it very wide just by pushing the side signal. I started like with nothing and pushed it until I felt like the whole thing sounded balanced.
That's actually a pretty cool technique to level your layers in general. If you start at 0 and then just like push it up until it sounds kind of natural, or until it blends really good.
Yeah,
that's a really cool tip, I think. Yeah.
And also, if it's the same sound, all the phasing and stuff is the same. If you have like your main sound and want to layer it like this, you may have to check if there's not too many effects that may delay the sound or something, and then you change your whole phases and
Kind of
everything sounds more crappy and not more clean or beautiful or balanced, but just more trashy.
Yeah.
So we started with a pretty simple sub layer. I think it wasn't that complicated. I took the same preset, so to say, and killed most of the things, so we just get a clean sub, so there are no effects on it. It's really just the basic FM sound we had in the beginning, and this is what starts to build our sub. But the whole song is in C sharp, which is quite unusual for a club track, and most of the time C sharp is too low for a subwoofer,
For a good
or
bass. Yeah.
it's too high and it's sounding kind of drony. So there was a lot of trial and error trying to find a sweet spot for the sound. So I made a different version of the sub. I figured out that the best way to get some warmth but also some depth on the sub on this first C sharp note was to do like this octave bass thing, and I took another LFO here on LFO4 on the pitch, and you see that this version doesn't even have FM. It's just a sub sine wave. It's a wavetable I built myself. On the one side you have a sine wave, and on the other side you have something similar to a sine wave. You have some upper harmonics, and it's just basic spectral morphing between them. So if you're not into Serum, that's some advanced techniques to create your own wavetables, but you can get the same result by taking a sine wave and putting some tube distortion on it. There's some tube distortion on it, by the way. And as I just saw, even more later on. So,
Oh, wow.
and we have a crazy EQ. I think I wanted to have those raspy highs, not too much of the low sub, because the sub is too low anyway. You on the C sharp note, you want more of the upper harmonics, and so there's a crazy tilt EQ going on, and some boosting of those upper harmonics at 160 hertz, and a high cut to cut some of the very high harmonics that were there from the tube distortion. So I then bounced this, and basically it's the sub is alternating between those two versions of the sound. So on the C sharp notes we have this distorted version, and on the other notes, which are I think a G sharp and an A sharp,
Yeah.
you have this a little bit more mellow normal sub.
I think we also did this kind of to give them the first chord more impact, right? When it drops, like it's like really energetic.
Yeah.
And then the second higher chords are more like just harmonic and beautiful kind of. And the first one is like your first drop chord and really needs to have a lot of energy.
Thank you very much for watching today. So this was our track Gone with Karol Tip. It's out on Heldeep right now. And also we will make another breakdown with Karol of the track, and we talk about some other elements on our own channel. Thanks to Point Blank for having us, and subscribe and comment and all the usual stuff. And of course the bell, it's very important.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Bye bye.
Bye.